this is how you should write your if statements. Now let's look at the code. So I will be teaching you about how you can refactor your if statements. First thing, I'm going to write a simple program over here, which is compare three numbers and print the number that's greater. This is the program that I'm going to use for demonstration purposes. Now let's see how we do that. So everything starts with void main, right? And if I want to compare three numbers, I need three numbers. So let me have three numbers over here. Okay, so I want to find the greater number among the three. How do you do that? So I can simply do this. I can compare A and B, right? If A is greater than B, A is greater, obviously, else B must be greater. I mean, even if B and A are equal, it's still the greater number. Next is if C is greater than A, then we know that C is greater. Otherwise, A is greater. Okay. If B is the greater number, then we compare it with B. If C is greater than B, we know that C is greater. Otherwise, we know that B should be greater, right? So I'm just gonna print that out like that. So I will print C over here, A over here, C over here, and B over here. Okay, so this is what my program looks like right now, right? If I run that program, I will do dot lesson number 2 1 . I get 10, which is what we expect because 10 is the greater among 10, 2 and 10. Now let's look at how we can refactor this. See, I see a lot of if statements over here. So whenever you see a lot of if statements, you can factor it out. So here is how I'll think about it. Okay, so instead of this if else, whenever we have only if else statement, we can make it simpler and we can use something called a ternary operator. Now let's look at how that will work. Okay, so ternary operator, the syntax will look like this. Okay, so let me just write down the syntax for ternary. I should do it over here. Syntax for ternary. It is a condition question mark, and this statement will execute if true. This will execute if false. Okay, so one more thing that we can do with a ternary will look like this. So I can refactor this if else like this. So I'll do int greater number. Okay, principle number 1, you should have a good naming. Greater number is a good naming. Is equal to, if C is greater than A, then C is the greater one, otherwise A is the greater one. Okay, so this statement, now just let me comment that out instead. So this statement can now become like this, greater number. Okay, so I can do the same thing over at this side. If C is greater than B, then C is the greater one, otherwise B is the greater one. I can just print the greater number. Okay, so if I just remove all of the commented out section, I will get a simple code. Okay, you see one more repetition over here, which is I see one more if else. If I see one more if else, I should be able to drop down into a single line using ternary. So what would that look like? Okay, so here the greater, let me have the first comparison. Naming a variable is the most difficult thing in the world, or let me just call it like this: first greater number. Okay, I compare A to B. If A is the winner, that's the one, otherwise it's B. then I do a second greater number. Okay, I just need to compare C with whatever the first greater number is. Okay, and if C is the greater one, C is the winner. Otherwise, whatever the first greater number is, it is the second greater number as well. Okay, so I can simply now print the second greater number. Okay, so I have dropped down from these many lines of code to this line of code. Now this makes it simpler. What else can we do to make it simpler? What we can do is the same thing that we did before in our first video. We can abstract this, right? We can abstract this into a function, and the function will be called greater among 3. I give you A, B, C. So it does not matter over here calling it A, B, and C, because we just need numbers. It does not matter which number is which, it just has to be numbers. So ABC is a fine variable name. What should this return? This should return the greater number among the 3. Okay, and I am gonna do this now. Grab everything, put it over here. Instead of printing it out, I'll just return the second greater number. Okay, so now I can do a greater number is equal to greater among 3. Okay, now notice this. I created a variable called greater number over here. What I could have done is I could have simply printed this, because that's just what I want, right? I just need to print that. I could have done that, but I didn't do that. I created a variable. This variable that I just created, that is known as a descriptive variable, which means the only function of this variable is to describe what's going on. Now, you might argue that the function is doing the job itself. The function is describing what's going on. But this variable is a good addition, especially if you have complicated functions. You're doing a big project and there is a complicated function and you don't immediately know what's going on, then the variable name would help you. And then I can print it out. See, sometimes it's not just about reducing the lines of code. Okay, it's also about giving description. You should be able to read it. Okay, you should having a variable name, a proper variable name, and having a variable that is not really needed is actually helpful when you're trying to read code. Okay, so this is a simple way, or one of the way you could refactor if statements.